My name is Lydia Vasconcellos, and my story begins within the greatest legacy of my family, Vasconcellos and Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in the country. My father, Arthur Vasconcellos, built this empire from nothing, with sheer effort and strategic vision. He always told me that an empire only survives if it is guided by firm and intelligent hands. And from an early age, I was being prepared to be that successor. I grew up inside the company. As a child, I would accompany my father to meetings, watching how he negotiated, always confident, always unbeatable. Later, I studied law at the best universities, specialized in business management, and returned ready to take my place. Everything seemed to be going according to plan, until Helena entered our lives. Helena Almeida Vasconcellos appeared when I was 20 years old. An elegant woman, always impeccable, with a calculated smile and eyes that never showed weakness. My father, a widower for years, was quickly captivated by her. In less than a year, they were married, and she became a constant presence in the firm. At first, I kept my distance. I knew Helena was ambitious, but I underestimated just how much. Over time, she began influencing decisions, suggesting strategic changes, and replacing my father's trusted advisors with new executives of her confidence. He trusted her blindly. I did not. Then came the hardest blow of my life. My father suffered a fatal heart attack during an important meeting. The shock was devastating. The moment he was gone, I realized my battle was only beginning. At the funeral, Helena arrived surrounded by lawyers and advisors, far too concerned about the will. When it was read, I discovered that my father had left me the majority control of the firm, but Helena inherited a third of the shares and access to the finances until everything was formally settled. At first, I thought she would accept this arrangement. But it didn't take long to realize that her true plan was to remove me from the picture. Days later, everything started changing. People loyal to my father were being pushed out, key contracts were being renegotiated without my approval, and crucial meetings were happening without me being invited. Subtle moves, but dangerous ones. That's when I received an anonymous warning. A folder arrived on my desk, no sender. Inside were incriminating documents about Helena, suspicious bank transfers, meetings with questionable investors, and emails where she openly discussed her plans to take over Vasconcellos and Associates. She was sabotaging me. If she thought I was going to let that happen, she was dead wrong. Since childhood, I knew my life wouldn't be easy. Being the heir to a legal empire meant living under constant pressure. My father always told me that a strong name like ours had to be upheld with intelligence and strategy. There was no room for weakness. I grew up without my mother, who passed away when I was only 4 years old. My father, Arthur Vasconcellos, devoted himself entirely to the firm, and in a way, the company became the foundation of our relationship. He wasn't an affectionate man, but I knew he loved me in his own way. His respect had to be earned through competence, and that's exactly what I did. I worked tirelessly to prove I was worthy of our family's legacy. But Helena entered our lives like a shadow. Helena always knew how to adapt to her surroundings. She never showed urgency or aggression, her weapon was subtlety. She presented herself as a sophisticated, refined woman, but I saw right through her. Before marrying my father, Helena was a socialite of little significance, known for her strategic relationships with influential men. She always chose her targets carefully, ensuring each step brought her closer to power. She approached my father at a charity event, and from that moment on, she never left his side. She made him believe he needed a new companion, someone to take care of him and the legacy he was building. By the time I realized it, she was already sitting at the decision-making table at Vasconcellos and Associates. My father, who had always been rational and cautious in business, gave in to her charm and manipulative charisma. Before long, Helena started influencing small decisions within the firm, slowly pushing out longtime advisors and bringing in new allies. My father died unexpectedly, and before the mourning had even settled, Helena was already acting as if the company belonged to her. When I started noticing strange movements within the firm, I knew I couldn't trust everyone. But there were still people loyal to my father, and to his rightful heir. Lily Harris, my best friend and right-hand woman at the company. A brilliant lawyer, we've worked together since I finished law school. She was one of the first to suspect Helena, and she's by my side every step of this battle. Jack Moore, my uncle, my father's younger brother. Though he was never directly involved in the business, he's an influential man with strong connections. He never trusted Helena, and now that everything is about to collapse, I'll need his experience to turn the game around. Logan Martinez, the new CFO, hired shortly before my father's death. Extremely competent, but far too close to Helena. I still don't know if I can trust him. David Robinson, Helena's attorney and right-hand man. Since my father's death, he has become a key figure in company decisions. He is clearly maneuvering to ensure Helena gains more control. Now that I knew my stepmother was plotting against me, I needed a strategy. This wasn't just a business dispute, it was a silent war. I couldn't afford to make mistakes. In the days that followed, my position within Vasconcellos and Associates started being undermined with surgical precision. Helena didn't act overtly, she never made moves that could be easily challenged. She was patient and calculated. The first strike came disguised as a necessary restructuring. I was summoned to a board meeting, one that I shouldn't have needed an invitation to, since, according to my father's will, I was the company's majority heir. But when I entered the boardroom, I realized Helena had already made her move. She was sitting at the head of the table. My seat. "Good morning, Livia," she greeted me with a polite smile, as if nothing was wrong. "We're discussing some organizational changes to ensure Vasconcellos and Associates remain strong during this transition period." I remained standing, my gaze scanning the faces around the table. Some board members avoided eye contact. David Robinson, Helena's loyal attorney, looked particularly pleased. Transition? I crossed my arms. The company's leadership was clearly defined in my father's will. There is no transition. Helena sighed, feigning patience. "Of course, dear. No one is questioning your position," she said, choosing her words carefully. "But some adjustments are necessary. We're reviewing executive contracts and redefining certain roles." And then came the real blow. Lily Harris, my best friend and right-hand woman, was being removed from her position as chief legal advisor. "You can't be serious," I said, feeling my blood boil. "Don't worry," Helena replied, still smiling. "Lily will still have an important role. We're simply redistributing responsibilities to avoid a concentration of power." A concentration of power? What she was really doing was isolating me, removing the people I trusted. I looked at Lily, who tried to mask the anger in her eyes. She gave me a subtle nod, as if to say, "This isn't over." But Helena had landed the first strike. After that meeting, I started scrutinizing every move within the company. Contracts were being revised without my approval, decisions were being made before I was consulted. Helena was laying the groundwork for something bigger. That's when Jack, my uncle, called me for a private conversation. "Livia, you need to see this," he said, handing me an envelope filled with documents. What I saw inside made my stomach turn. Helena was negotiating the sale of part of Vasconcellos and Associates shares to a foreign investor. She was trying to dismantle my control piece by piece, weakening my position until I had no real authority left. And the worst part? She was being helped by Logan Martinez, the new CFO. He had been facilitating the movement of shares and restructuring contracts to make everything legally viable. Helena was acting with surgical precision, ensuring that every step was legally airtight. But now I knew. Now, I had proof. And if Helena thought I was going to stand by and watch as she stole my father's company, she was dead wrong. The revelation that Helena was negotiating the sale of shares hit me like a punch to the gut. But the worst part was knowing that Logan Martinez, the CFO I was still evaluating, was involved in the scheme. I needed a strategy. If I confronted Helena directly now, without a solid plan, she would twist the facts against me. It was time to build my own network of allies. My uncle Jack had warned me about the movement of the shares, but I knew I needed someone inside the financial game to help me understand the details of the fraud Helena was orchestrating. That's when I made a risky decision. I approached Logan Martinez. I arranged an informal meeting with him at a discreet cafe, far from prying eyes at the company. "Logan, I'll be direct," I said without hesitation. "I know you're helping Helena. I know about the financial transactions you're facilitating." He went pale, but tried to maintain his composure. Livia, I'm just following orders. Orders that could cost you your career and maybe even your freedom, I countered. I placed a dossier on the table. Inside were the documents my uncle had gathered. Do you really think Helena will protect you when all of this comes to light? Logan took a deep breath, visibly nervous. What do you want from me? I gave him a slight smile. I want you to help me take Helena down. He hesitated, but eventually gave in. Whether it was out of fear or self-interest didn't matter. What mattered was that I now had someone inside her operation. Now, I just needed the final move. With Logan on my side, I started gathering evidence, emails, suspicious financial transactions, secret meetings. Helena was selling off the company piece by piece, but she made sure to keep my signature off the documents to prevent me from catching on. That's when I had an idea. I asked Logan to suggest one final transaction to Helena, something that would solidify the sale of a significant portion of the company to foreign investors. But this time I would make sure the operation was fully traceable. The night the transaction went through, Logan sent me a message. It's done. By tomorrow, it'll be too late for her to deny it. I woke up early the next morning and went straight to the office. Helena was already there, as always, reigning in my place. But that day, she wasn't expecting the visitors I had scheduled. When the auditors and federal investigators walked into the boardroom, Helena finally lost her composure. What is this? She demanded, standing up in fury. I crossed my arms and smiled. The audit you tried to avoid. The agents immediately began reviewing the recent contracts and financial transactions. Logan had handed over everything we needed. Now, Helena was cornered. This is outrageous, she exclaimed. You set me up. I stepped closer, locking eyes with her. You tried to take my father's company from me, Helena. But in the end, the one walking away empty-handed is you. For the first time, the control was slipping from her grasp. The audit exposed financial misappropriation, fraudulent contracts, and her attempts to sell company shares without my approval. Everything was documented. She had no way out. But Helena was not the type to accept defeat easily. This proves nothing, she insisted, trying to maintain her composure as the investigators analyzed the documents. This company has always had financial transactions like these. I glanced at Logan Martinez, who was seated beside the auditors. He cleared his throat and spoke coldly. Actually, Mrs. Helena, all the suspicious transactions were approved directly by you. And now we have bank trace confirmations. Helena turned a murderous glare at Logan. You traitorous rat. He looked away, visibly uncomfortable. The head of the audit team lifted a folder. Based on the evidence, we will be forwarding this case to the public prosecutor's office. If proven, this could be classified as fraudulent management and misappropriation of corporate assets. The room fell silent. Helena's face tensed, but she still had one last move. If I go down, you're coming down with me, Livia, she whispered, stepping closer to me. I have nothing to hide, I replied firmly. Are you sure? She gave me a cruel smile. What if I told you your father wasn't as innocent as you think? For a second, I hesitated. What do you mean by that? She leaned in even closer, whispering in my ear. If you push forward with this, I'll release documents that expose shady deals your father made in the past. His name will be dragged through the mud. And your company will never recover. My heart pounded in my chest. I had won the battle, but Helena still had a deadly trump card. If I moved forward, I might end up destroying my father's legacy in the process. Helena's threat hung in the air like a blade about to drop. If I followed through with the charges, she would expose documents that, according to her, tied my father to questionable business dealings. Could Vasconcellos and Associates survive a scandal of that magnitude? And my father's name? Was I really willing to tarnish his legacy just to take Helena down? I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, but I kept my expression firm. You think you can blackmail me, Helena? She smirked, that cruel glint still in her eyes. It's not blackmail, dear. It's a warning. For a moment, the room felt too small. The auditors were waiting for my response. Logan avoided making eye contact, and my Uncle Jack looked tense, like he knew I was standing at a critical crossroads. I took a deep breath. Then prove it. What? Helena blinked, caught off guard. You said you have documents. Show them. She hesitated, and that's when I realized she was bluffing. If she really had something incriminating, she would have used it already. You've got nothing, do you? I stepped closer, locking eyes with her. Careful, Livia, she whispered, trying to keep up her facade. No, Helena. You should have been careful. You spent all this time underestimating the wrong person. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the audit chief stepped in. If there are any additional documents you'd like to present, you may do so now, Mrs. Helena. Otherwise, we will proceed with the evidence we have. Helena glanced around. There was no escape. This is a mistake, she muttered. She knew she had lost. And I knew I had won. Helena was defeated, but the battle wasn't over. Even with all the evidence against her, I knew that the real challenge would be rebuilding the empire she had nearly destroyed. In the days that followed, the auditors finalized their investigations, and their reports were submitted to the public prosecutor's office. Helena was officially removed from Vasconcellos and Associates and would face criminal charges for fraudulent management and embezzlement. But I knew my victory wasn't just about taking her down. I had to prove that I was capable of leading the company and restoring its credibility. My first decision? Reversing every change Helena had made. Lily Harris was reinstated as chief legal counsel. Her skill and loyalty had been essential in exposing Helena's scheme, and now, she would be my partner in rebuilding the firm. David Robinson, Helena's corrupt lawyer, was fired immediately. I had no place for disloyal people around me. Logan Martinez, despite helping take Helena down, resigned. He knew that, even though he had redeemed himself, his reputation was too damaged to stay. Before leaving, he turned to me and said, "Thank you for giving me a chance to make things right." I simply responded, "I hope you use this opportunity to become a better man." But I knew the hardest challenge was still ahead. Helena had nearly destroyed the company, and the market had felt the impact. Clients were nervous. Investors were hesitant. Competitors were ready to take advantage of our weakness. I had to act fast. I organized a press conference to set the record straight. It was time to show the world that Vasconcellos and Associates was under new, and definitive, leadership. That day, I wore the blazer my father always wore to important meetings. It was a reminder of where I came from and what I was protecting. Standing before the cameras and microphones, I spoke with unwavering confidence. Vasconcellos and Associates has gone through a turbulent period, but we are stronger than ever. Transparency and ethics have always been the pillars of this company, and under my leadership, that will never be compromised again. The reporters bombarded me with questions, about Helena, about the investigation, about my father. But I didn't waver. My commitment is not to the past, but to the future. We are ready to move forward. The next day's headlines read, Livia Vasconcellos takes control and vows to restore the firm's integrity. After scandal, Vasconcellos and Associates rises under new leadership. And just like that, trust began to rebuild. A month later, I received an envelope. It was a visitation request from the women's prison where Helena was being held, awaiting trial. I considered ignoring it. She didn't deserve another second of my time. But something inside me wanted to see her defeat up close. The next day, I went. When I walked into the visitation room, Helena was already seated. The arrogance was gone from her eyes, replaced by frustration and exhaustion. "Here to admire your victory?" she asked with a bitter smile. I crossed my arms. "I'm here to make one thing clear, Helena. You tried to take my father's company from me. But in the end, I took everything from you." She let out a humorless laugh. "Maybe you won this battle, Livia. But if there's one thing I've learned about power, no one holds on to it forever." I stood up, ready to leave. "Maybe. But I will do the impossible to keep what's mine." And without looking back, I walked out of that place. Helena was no longer part of my story. Now, I was in control of my own destiny. Helena was out of the game. But I knew my victory wasn't complete yet. Yes, I had managed to push her out of Vasconcellos and Associates, saving the firm from financial collapse and from the hands of an opportunist. But the market didn't forgive weakness. The firm's reputation was still fragile. Clients were hesitant. Competitors were circling like vultures, ready to take advantage of any misstep. If I didn't take decisive action, our position as a market leader could be at risk. Just weeks after Helena's downfall, an unexpected opportunity came my way. One of the biggest multinational corporations in the country, Goldman & Company, was considering a multi-million-dollar legal advisory contract for their operations in the U.S. If we landed this deal, Vasconcellos and Associates would be back on top. But there was a problem. Goldman was still hesitant because of the recent scandal. They wanted assurances that the firm was stable and under competent leadership. If I failed this negotiation, it would be a devastating blow. I set up a meeting with Fernando Goldman, the company's CEO, a man known for his ruthless business tactics. He leaned back in his chair, eyes sharp behind his glasses. "I need guarantees, Livia," he said, his tone measured. "Your firm survived a scandal. How do I know there won't be another one?" This was my moment to prove that I was worthy of the Vasconcellos name. I met his gaze head on. "Because now, I'm in charge." He studied me for a long moment. Then, he gave the slightest smile. "We'll see." The negotiation was going to be tough. But I was ready. As I prepared for this crucial deal, something unexpected happened. My phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A deep, unfamiliar voice spoke. "You think you got rid of her, don't you?" My grip on the phone tightened. "Who is this?" Helena isn't the kind of woman who loses so easily. My heart froze. "What do you want?" The voice chuckled darkly. "Just to remind you, you haven't won yet." The call cut off. A cold chill ran down my spine. Helena still had allies on the outside. And they weren't going to accept her defeat so easily. Now, I wasn't just fighting for a business deal. I was fighting to protect everything I had built. The mysterious call echoed in my mind. Helena isn't the kind of woman who loses so easily. Even behind bars, she was still trying to pull the strings. But I wasn't going to let her destroy what I had rebuilt. The next day, I went to the police station handling Helena's case. I spoke with the lead investigator and uncovered something unsettling. "Someone recently tried to have her transferred to a minimum security prison," he said, flipping through some documents. "But we denied the request." "Who filed the request?" The officer handed me a document. David Robinson's name was on it. Helena still had pawns on the board. I walked out of the station with one thought in mind. If she was trying to escape, it meant she was planning something. And I needed to act first. A few days later, a bombshell hit the media. An anonymous dossier was leaked to major news outlets, insinuating that Vasconcellos and Associates had been involved in illegal business dealings in the past. It was exactly the move Helena had threatened to make. The headlines were brutal. Was Vasconcellos and Associates involved in financial irregularities? The dark past of Livia Vasconcellos' firm. It was obvious. Helena wasn't just trying to take me down, she wanted to destroy my credibility before I could consolidate my victory. But she made a mistake. She underestimated my ability to fight back. That same day, I called a press conference. "These allegations are completely unfounded," I stated, my voice unwavering. "And to prove our transparency, I have voluntarily requested an independent audit to review all company contracts and transactions." The journalists exchanged surprised glances. I continued. "Unlike what happened in the past, we have nothing to hide. And anyone found responsible for past misconduct, no matter their last name, will be held accountable." My statement sent shockwaves through the industry. Instead of retreating or hiding, I met the accusations head-on. The next day, the headlines shifted. Livia Vasconcellos confronts scandal with transparency. New leadership at Vasconcellos and Associates shows strength in the face of allegations. Helena's move failed. But I needed one final step to bury her for good. Through my Uncle Jack, I obtained crucial information about David Robinson. I discovered he was receiving payments from an anonymous account, money meant to secure Helena's release and damage my reputation. I took a risky step. I set up a meeting with him. We met at a discreet restaurant. He looked smug, convinced I was there to negotiate. "You shouldn't have come, Livia," he said, crossing his arms. "You know Helena always has a card up her sleeve." I smirked and slid a flash drive across the table. This is all I need to ensure she never gets out of prison. He picked it up, confused. When he opened the files on his laptop, his expression changed instantly. Inside were incriminating records, proof of his involvement in Helena's money laundering scheme. How did you get this? He stammered. I stood up, victorious. You trusted the wrong people, David. And I learned to never trust anyone. The next day, David was arrested, and with him, Helena's last hope disappeared. The battle was officially over. I had won. With Helena's downfall, stability finally returned to the firm. The independent audit confirmed that Vasconcellos and Associates had no past involvement in illegal activities. The company's name was cleared, and with that, the deal with Goldman & Company was sealed. The firm was safe. And now, completely under my control. As for Helena? She never got out of prison. The new evidence against David further implicated her, making any chance of release impossible. This time, there were no blackmail attempts, no threats. She simply disappeared from the corporate world, swallowed by her own mistakes. I never saw her again. And I never thought about her again. With Lily as my right-hand woman and Jack as my trusted advisor, we rebuilt the company from the ground up, reinforcing its foundation and reputation. Employees regained trust in leadership. Clients believed in our capabilities once more. I was no longer just the heir to Vasconcellos and Associates. I was the leader. A few months later, I stepped into my father's old office, the place where he had built this empire. I ran my fingers along the wooden desk where he had spent so many years. For a moment, I wondered what he would say if he were here. Maybe he'd tell me I fought the right way. Maybe he'd tell me he never doubted me. Or maybe, he'd just look at me with that quiet pride he always had. I smiled to myself. I protected his legacy. But more than that, I built my own.